Hey everyone, Rachel here. Yes, I'm finally back after a long hiatus on this channel. And honestly, I'm so sorry for ghosting you guys. Life has been lifing. The past few months have really been about logging off, spending quality time with family, being present with my partner and our friends, and mainly just slowing down. We've also been busy building our space as we get ready for a very new and exciting chapter in our lives, aka starting a family. So yes, I am expecting, and that's where my energy really has been lately, and I hope you guys understand. But that's not to say I haven't been around. For those of you who may not know, I'm also a video content creator on Moving to Canada's socials. You'll see me pop in there sometimes, but I've mostly been behind the scenes, helping shape the content that you see across all their socials. Anyway, I am coming out of my long hibernation because something major just dropped, and that's all the news that came about after the immigration levels plan has been released. And it's something that I know will affect a huge part of my audience watching. So today we're breaking down the updates that matter most for future students, recent graduates, and anyone planning their long-term immigration pathway. Let's get into it. Now, before we dive into the detailed breakdown, here's a quick TLDR to give you the inside scoop right from the jump. First, for 2026 specifically, Canada is planning to welcome about 380,000 new permanent residents and roughly 385,000 temporary residents. Second, Canada is pulling back temporary resident numbers quite a bit, where unfortunately, international students make up the biggest portion of that drop. But on the brighter side, there is some good news. Canada just announced new incentives aimed specifically at master's and other graduate level programs, which I'll expound on in just a bit. Moving over to the PR side, targets are staying pretty steady compared to the previous year's plans, but there are some important shifts happening beneath the surface. For one, IRCC is giving provinces more control by boosting provincial nominee program target numbers. There also seems to be a one-time accelerated PR pathway coming for certain work permit holders. In other news, category-based draws are here to stay with possible new additions. And finally, French-speaking proficiency continues to be a priority in Canada's immigration plan. So yeah, I'll be breaking all of this down in more detail, but I just wanted to give you the 411 upfront. So with that in mind, let's jump into the first group, which are those who are planning to study in Canada. And guys, the biggest thing that you need to know right now is this. International student targets for 2026 are being cut almost in half. Last year's plan expected around 306,000 international students for 2026, but under the new plan, that number drops to just 155,000. Now, before you start crossing Canada off your list or stressing about whether it's still worth applying, let's put some context behind those numbers. So Canada has a public data set tracking new student arrivals, and the most recent update goes up to September 2025. Between January and September alone, Canada welcomed roughly 100,000 new international students, which means that if this pace continues, the country naturally lands somewhere around the 150,000 range by year's end. So this new target isn't a shock cut, it's a realignment. Moreover, here's the part you really need to know. Not all student groups are treated the same under this cap. Some students are going to move through much more smoothly, and one of the biggest winners are master's and PhD students. Starting January 1st, 2026, IRCC is rolling out a few changes that honestly make graduate studies a lot more attractive. For starters, if you're entering a master's or doctoral program at a public university, you won't need a PAL or TAL anymore. This removes one of the biggest bottlenecks we saw this year, which means no more waiting for provincial quota space, no delays, and no more panic over allocations filling up. On top of that, doctoral students applying from outside Canada will have access to faster processing, potentially as fast as 14 calendar days. And finally, if you're planning to bring family with you, you can submit applications together and IRCC will process them as a package. So if you're deciding what to study, the graduate pathway right now offers fewer administrative hurdles, clearer timelines, and honestly, a much cleaner runway into Canada. Now, if you're someone who likes numbers or just wants to understand where your chances are strongest, here's what the study permit distribution actually looks like for 2026. So IRCC expects to issue up to 408,000 study permits next year. That includes 155 new students entering Canada for the first time, plus 253,000 extensions for those already here continuing their studies. But what's more important is how those study permits are divided. In 2026, study permits are expected to break down into 4 groups as seen on your screen. Now, the group that I really want you to watch, though, is the last one, specifically the 180,000 PAL/TAL required applicants, because that's the group where competition is going to be tight. And this mostly affects students entering non-graduate post-secondary programs, things like diplomas, bachelor degrees, post-grad certificates, and post-degree diplomas, basically any stream outside the master's/PhD route. In this bucket, you're not only competing for admission, you're competing for a seat in the provincial quota. And that means a few things. One, you have to be more intentional with your study plan. So don't just aim to get accepted, but choose the right program level, right school, and right province. Two, a strong application matters more than ever. DLIs don't want to waste allocations on weak applications, so you definitely want to present a solid, well-prepared case. Third, timing matters. If a province fills its allocation quickly, schools may close intakes earlier than expected. So the earlier you apply, the better shot you have before allocations fill up. Finally, provinces with larger allocations aren't automatically easier. Yes, Ontario, BC, and Quebec get the biggest share, but that means they'll also attract the most applicants. Popularity comes with pressure, and higher demand means those spots can fill fast, intakes may close earlier, and schools may need to be more selective with who they issue PAL-supported offers to. So don't just follow popularity, follow opportunity. Now, I want to end this segment by saying, yes, the student numbers are lower for the upcoming year. And yes, the system is more controlled than before. But I don't want you to walk away feeling like Canada is shutting the door, because it isn't. If anything, I actually see this shift as a positive for the students who do make it here. The updates you're seeing right now, they aren't walls, they're filters. And filters don't block opportunity, they refine it. The goal here is to bring in students who are aligned with Canada's future, the ones who come prepared, who choose programs with intention, who think about employability, and who are building toward long-term immigration goals. And hey, if that's you, then these changes could actually work in your favor. So instead of feeling discouraged, I hope this motivates you. With the right program, the right timing, and a strong application, Canada is still very much an amazing study destination, and one that can lead to work opportunities and a real path to staying here long term. Let's now move on to the next bucket, aka those of you who are already in Canada and currently studying. Some of you might be wondering whether the new immigration levels plan affects you at all, and if you should be worried. And the straightforward answer is not right now. Because you're already here, the new study permit caps and temporary resident targets don't affect your current status. But where this will matter for you is later, when you move on to the next stage, which I'm assuming for most of you will be the post-graduation work permit stage. So here's the one thing that I really want you to pay attention to at this moment. Make sure the program that you're studying is eligible for the PGWP. I mentioned this in the previous video, but there were updates around PGWP eligibility that took effect last year, with some programs now requiring certain language levels or specific fields of study. I'm not going to unpack all of that here because this video will get confusing, but I will drop the IRCC link on your screen and in the description box below so you can check it out yourself. Now, why should you care, right? Well, the main reason I'm sharing all of this is because I want you to keep your momentum in Canada. I want you to be able to stay after graduation, work, and gain that valuable Canadian work experience, because with where PR targets are right now, Canadian experience is becoming a key eligibility requirement across so many permanent residency pathways. And your PGWP is what unlocks that. Another thing I want you to keep in mind, and this is especially for those of you who came to Canada with your spouse and or dependent children, is that their ability to extend their work permit or study permit is tied to your PGWP approval. You're the principal applicant, so your status affects what they can do next. So if this applies to you, make sure you also review their extension requirements. Your job type after graduation, the length of your PGWP, and your program eligibility all impact whether your family can continue staying, studying, or working in Canada without interruptions. I want you to start thinking about this sooner than later so you're not caught off guard and you can plan ahead with your family in mind. Let's now move on to those of you who are already working in Canada or perhaps working towards your PR goals. Honestly, this is one of the most important groups in this entire update because many of the changes we're seeing in the new immigration levels plan can maximize your chances of getting permanent residency down the line. So let's start with some good news. If you're already working in Canada, you're actually in a strong position. Why? Well, Canada wants people who are already here, who already studied, have local work experience, have integrated into the community, are paying taxes, and contributing to the economy. In short, they want people who have built their roots in Canada, and that's you. It also looks like there are some promising pathways on the horizon. One of the biggest announcements is an accelerated pathway to PR for work permit holders. The government says they're planning to roll out a one-time measure that could help up to 33,000 work permit holders transition to permanent residency between 2026 and 2027. Now, this is big, but the details are still very limited. What we do know is this: it will be open to current work permit holders already in Canada. IRCC also hinted that there may be a focus on people working in in-demand occupations, and there may be priority for those in rural or regional areas. What we don't know yet is just as important, such as when the program opens or closes, the exact eligibility requirements, and which occupations or tier levels will be targeted. So for now, consider this as a heads up that something promising is coming, and once IRCC releases more info, you'll hear more about it over on my socials, so be sure to follow me there too. Another thing that I want you to start paying attention to are the provinces across Canada and the types of skills or occupations they're prioritizing. The reason I'm saying this is because provinces are about to play a much bigger role in immigration over the next few years. IRCC is planning to boost PNP targets significantly. The target is set at just over 91,000, and it rises to more than 92,000 in both 2027 and 2028. That's a huge rebound compared to the 2025 target, which was only about 55,000. So long story short, provinces will have a lot more influence over who gets selected for PR. Now, we still don't know exactly how these spots will be distributed across each province or which ones will get larger allocations. That part is still a big question mark, and it varies among provinces. But what you can do right now is this: start familiarizing yourself with the PNP programs in the provinces you're interested in. Go through their websites, see which occupations they're targeting, and check whether your skills or occupation align with what they're looking for. If you want a good starting point, shameless plug, Moving to Canada has a PNP live tracker that consolidates everything into one place. Yes, I do work with them, but no, they did not pay me to share this. I just think it's a useful tool. Next, let's talk about category-based draws. Category-based draws are basically IRCC's way of inviting candidates for PR based on specific skills and occupations that align with Canada's economic needs. And from everything we're seeing, these draws are here to stay. While the Immigration Levels Plan doesn't clearly spell out which categories IRCC will prioritize in 2026 or how many invitations they'll issue per category, we can look at history to understand the trend. So the category that received the most invitations this year went to those with French language proficiency, at a whopping 36,000 invitations as of filming this video. And when you look at frequency, meaning how often were draws actually held, French, healthcare, and education are the top three. So that gives us a solid hint about where IRCC's priorities currently are. For now, it's safe to assume that the 6 existing categories you see on your screen will continue to be the foundation. But IRCC also hinted at the possibility of adding new categories next year, including areas like leadership and senior management, researchers and scientists, and even highly skilled military recruits. So start thinking about how your experience or career path fits into these buckets. Second, start organizing any documents that can help prove your work experience in one of these categories. And the best part about category-based draws, they don't require a super high CRS score in comparison to Canadian Experience Class draws, PNP draws, etc. So even if your CRS score isn't where you want it to be at, category-based draws can still open a very real door to PR for you. Finally, let's touch on French immigration. In 2025 alone, French-speaking candidates received around 36,000 ITAs, which is a standout figure when you compare it to every other category-based draw. That alone shows how strong IRCC's focus on French language proficiency has been. Under the new plan, that focus isn't going anywhere. Here are the actual targets for French-speaking PR admissions outside Quebec over the next 3 years. The only tiny shift here is that the 2026 target dips slightly from a notional target of 9.5% down to 9%. It's a very small decrease, and it just shows that IRCC wants to maintain this focus rather than expand it. Now, if you've been thinking about learning French or improving your French score, let me just say this clearly. The best time to start was last year. And the second best time to start is right now. What I mean by this is that whenever IRCC opens the door for a specific group, whether that's French speakers, certain occupations, or a special one-time pathway, it's always the people who are preparing before the trend who benefit the most. They're already at the required language levels or are close, they already have the documentation, and they're ready to apply the moment the opportunity appears. And as expected, once everyone else finds out that a particular pathway is hot, suddenly a huge wave of people start trying to squeeze through the same small door. And that naturally makes things more competitive by the time you qualify. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it so you can be strategic, because learning French is still absolutely worth considering, not just for PR, but for better job opportunities, perhaps government roles in the future, access to cities like Montreal, Ottawa, and Moncton, and just the personal benefit of being bilingual in a bilingual country. So let me just summarize everything that we've discussed so far. Here are the biggest takeaways that I want you to remember. For one, if you're planning to study in Canada, just keep in mind that student targets are dropping, but it's really just Canada aligning with what's already happening. Next, master's and PhD students are getting some of the best advantages we've seen in a long time, aka lesser requirements and faster processing. So if you're choosing to study in Canada, this is something to think about. Now, if you're already studying in Canada, you're not affected by the new caps. Your main focus right now should be making sure that your program actually makes you eligible for the PGWP, because that's what's going to let you stay, work, and gain Canadian work experience you'll eventually need for your long-term immigration goals. And if you brought your family with you, remember their extensions depend on your status, so get ahead of that. Moving on, if you're already working or about to start working on your PGWP, you're actually in one of the strongest spots. Canada is clearly prioritizing people who already live and work here. Like, we've got that potential one-time accelerated PR pathway on the horizon, PNP targets going up, and category-based draws, especially French, continue to play a big role. Overall, Canada isn't closing its doors, it's just becoming more intentional about who it wants to attract and retain. Okay, that's it for today's video. I know that this was a long one, but I really hope that this breakdown helped make everything a little clearer. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to share it with a friend, and of course drop a comment below if you have any questions. I'll link all the relevant resources in the description in case you want to read more on it. Thank you so much for watching, be kind, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.